So, in the past few videos, we have been going through regular verbs part 3, and so far, we have gone through initial um, uh, initial part of this section, um, and this is basically trying to summarize whatever we have learned so far in terms of singular and plural subject forms, and the conjugation in terms of those three modal verbs that we have been using, like comer. It's an er verb, and you have er verbs. Um, excuse me. So comer, which is an er verb, and then you have hablar, which is an er verb, and then you have vivir, which is an ir verb, right? So basically, for all of them, irrespective of whatever verb form they have, you drop the ending, and what you need to know is what are we going to add to the verb after we drop the ending in terms of conjugating with the subject. So again, this is all what you have seen and learned in previous sections, what we're seeing on the screen right now. Um, and yesterday, I believe, or maybe the day before, we have been, going through this rule, which basically states that um, subject pronouns are not always required, right? So it's because the verb endings can indicate who is performing the action. So, for instance, hablo, from what you have seen, anything ending with o in most cases, or more often than not, the subject is yo. So it's yo hablo. So because if you recall from previous sections, anything we add with any verb we conjugate the subject yo will end with o, irrespective of the verb form. So it could be yo hablo, yo como, yo vivo, right? So based on that theory, if we have hablo or como, we know for a fact that the subject is yo. So we don't need, at least in Spanish, we don't need to explicitly um, mention the subject, right? So in this case, it would just be hablo español. I speak Spanish. Or you have another phrase which like solo hablo un poco de español, which means I only speak a little Spanish. Solo hablo un poco de español. So notice that we're not using yo, right? So it's you're not using the subject in that case. So that's what it means. And similarly, you have comemos carne. So imos is from nosotros. So we eat meat. So nosotros is not necessary. So anything ending with imos um, would mean it is nosotros. So nosotros means we all, or we eat meat, right? So and the same thing can be said with vives. So two is not necessary. So with two, and in terms of er and ir verbs, we add es, right? So it's like two vives. tú comes. For ella verbs it is yes. So tú hablas. So so basically we don't need the subject form, right? Once once we know the verb and it is unique in a sense, we don't need to explicitly mention the subject. And subject pronouns, the subject pronouns are often used for clarification. For example, the verb from habla is ambiguous. So subject pronouns in this case, you have él and ella and él. So he or she, right? And they are subject pronouns, and we are using them because they are ambiguous. Because both of them have the same rules, that you drop the ending and then add an a for er verbs and e for er verbs, right? So if you just mention habla, you don't know if it's a he or a she, right? Because both of them have the exact definitions. I mean, it's exactly similar. I mean, the rules are similar. It's the same, in fact. So you add an a for er verbs, you add an e for er verbs, right? Um, so that's why, and and that's the reason we mentioned subject pronouns, to clarify, and to ensure that there is no ambiguity whatsoever. So therefore, to distinguish between you speak, he speaks, and she speaks, it may be necessary to use the subject pronoun. Often the conversation implies the subject of the verb. In such cases, the pronoun may be omitted. Um, okay, so let's look at one more example before we close it off for the day. Um, Subject pronouns are often used for emphasis. So it is, believe it is ella, right? And we can illustrate this with an example. So
ella,
all right, ella. So it's pronounced as ella, right? Ella habla español y yo hablo inglés, right? So ella, and they've um, and they have put ella and yo in bold. So ella habla español y yo hablo inglés. First of all, let's make sure the pronunciation is correct.
ella habla español y yo hablo inglés.
This seems to be pretty okay. So ella habla español y yo hablo inglés. So what I'm trying to say is subject pronouns are often used for emphasis. Ella habla. Ella would be she speaks Spanish and I speak English. So she and I. So they're saying it's often used for emphasis. Here there's no ambiguity with respect to hablo. The subject pronoun is merely adding emphasis, right? Because we have seen earlier that if you are mentioning hablo, we don't need to add yo because we know it's yo. We know the subject is yo. So subject pronouns yo. So we don't need to explicitly mention that, right? So but here it's just being used for emphasizing it, right? Emphasizing, for emphasis. So she speaks Spanish and I speak English. Okay, so let's leave it at that. We seem to have covered a good amount of theory here. So in the next video, I'll be continuing with this, right? So until then, see you next time.